Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by Titan FC Featherweight, Kurt Holobaugh. Kurt, how are you?
Man.
Kurt, you got a fight coming up August 22nd at Titan FC 29. How's training been going for the fight?
Training's great. Getting a lot of work in with a lot of different guys around Louisiana. Everybody's been a big help so far, and feeling pretty good.
Mm-hmm. You've been doing a lot of cross-training around the state of Louisiana. You've been bouncing around from spot to spot. Is this the norm? Is this what you usually do, or is this just in preparation for this bout?
No, it's not really normal. Most of the time I stay with with my team, Grace United in Hammond, Louisiana. But talent around Louisiana, man, I like the fool with it and go around and get some work with all these great guys.
Mm-hmm. Where exactly have you been training, and who are some of the people that you've been training with in preparation for this fight?
I've been down there with Rich Clementi, down in Slidell. He's probably about 45 minutes away from. There's a gym in New Orleans called Mid-City. A lot of guys that I know that train up there now. They got some good guys, some top guys in the state, and our guys out here in Hammond and Denham Springs.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, you're taking on Lloyd Woodard on August 22nd. What are your thoughts about him as an opponent?
Man, he's an exciting fighter. He's a good opponent. He's one of those guys that show up and come to fight no matter what, no matter how he's feeling. So it's going to be a fun fight for him. I'm sure it's going to be a fun fight for him as well. I see that we kind of look like we have the same fight style. We both just like to take the center of the cage and see whatever happens.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, I've heard in other interviews you say that you're very familiar with his fighting because you watched him a bunch when he was fighting for Bellator. I'm just curious, in preparation for this fight, how much film have you studied of his?
I've actually studied most of his fights. He's got a lot of fights on YouTube. I have a lot of fights on YouTube also. So, it looks like we both got a pretty good, fair amount of footage to study of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to watch a lot of footage. I like to watch a lot of footage and really see what a guy does a lot. It makes me a little more comfortable in the fight.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, when you're watching film, do you look at his losses more than his wins, or his wins more than his losses? Like, when you break down a fight, and it doesn't have to be Lloyd Woodard, it can be any fight that you're going into, what do you like to study more? Do you like to study the fights where he was successful in, or do you like to watch the fights where, okay, he lost at this, maybe I can implement that? When you watch a fight of someone that you're going to, potentially fight or schedule to fight, what are you studying, and what kind of fights do you study?
I probably study, what he's good at, and that's what that's what I am going to try to avoid. I'm going to try to avoid the things that he's good at. And, in his losses, he only has really one loss by stoppage at TKO, and that was just a quick right hand that came from Rick Hunt. So, all his other losses was pretty close decisions. So, I just like to study what he's good at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you think about this fight and you play this fight in your head, what do you see happening in this fight? Do you see it being, a fight where you just go out there and start banging, right from the get-go, no feeling out process? Or do you see, you guys testing a little, starting a little slow, kind of testing each other, and then seeing what happens? What are you expecting going into this fight, and how do you see this fight playing out?
I always like to see the fight, filling it out a little bit, trying to be type, with my stand-up and everything like that. But it's always seems to just so happen to be a brawl with me. So I'm looking for it. It's going to be technical at the beginning. But, man, you put this fight on paper, and you got a nice little scrap.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're a very tall guy for this weight class. You're 5'11", and fighting at 145. There aren't many guys who have the length that you have, but that always doesn't benefit a guy who's a lot taller, especially in this sport. Maybe in boxing it would, where guys don't have to worry about takedowns and can really sit on their punches, but in this sport you have to worry about all kinds of disciplines, so not all the time it works out in the favor of the taller fighter. Now with Lloyd Woodard, a guy who's the same height as you, do you find that as a benefit for you, not having to deal with a shorter opponent?
I think it's going to benefit me a little bit because shorter opponents tend to be able to get under me a lot more. Because just kind of the way I stand, I kind of stand a little tall, which I'm trying to correct that, But I think those being about the same height is going to help me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, what do you think his camp is telling him to do against you in this fight?
Man, I really don't have any idea. I think that every one of my fights, I'm pretty well-rounded. I've done good pretty much everywhere. So I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I was the opponent that was going to fight me, what I would really game plan for.
I see. Now, you're 3-0 post-Zuffa, whether it's Strikeforce or the UFC, 3-0 on a 3-fight win streak. Where do you feel that you've improved the most, whether it's, in-cage fighting, your technique and stuff like that, or fight preparation, or mentally, or just how, you look at a fight overall, like, your fight IQ and stuff like that? Where do you feel that you've improved the most since we last saw you in the UFC?
Oh, man, my knowledge in the fight game's definitely improved. I think definitely them 2 losses, made me understand the game a lot better. And, besides that, working on my wrestling and, getting up from when somebody's trying to hold me down, them things right there, I think I've learned the most.
Mm-hmm. In what way did you learn from those losses?
Well, I've learned that, for one, you got to believe in yourself. Just because you're up on that main stage and you're not used to that, you got to believe that you can beat whatever guy standing across from you. And, so that's what I think that I didn't do. I didn't quite believe in myself. I was just there still as in, I guess, fan mode instead of fighter mode. So I really don't think that I really pushed myself for the finish in the fights. I think I kind of let up a little bit in the silent fight, and I think that kind of cost me. And the same thing with Pat Healy. I didn't try to, I stayed on the ground too long, and I let him just work and, pretty much outpoint me. And, if I know what I know now, then I would have been, trying to get back to my feet every chance that I could and trying to take the fight to him harder just for, whatever time was remaining.
Mm-hmm. Now, your Zuffa run was a very interesting one because you got into Strikeforce because you took a fight against a guy that nobody wanted to fight at that time. Pat Healy was the number 1 contender. He was supposed to fight Gilbert Melendez for the title. That fight didn't end up happening, and then he needed an opponent, and you stepped up when no one else would. And then you were released from the UFC because, again, you lost, but you took a fight against a guy that nobody was raising their hand to fight. You took the fight on short notice, and then you lost, and then they released you. So I'm just curious, do you feel that you got a fair chance in the UFC? Do you feel that, they gave you a good opportunity in there because, you took 2 fights on short notice, and one was against a guy who was very highly ranked, and then, you stepped up when no one else would, and then after that you were shown the door. So, do you feel you got a fair shake in the UFC?
I personally don't think that I really did. I thought that, the performances, I didn't win, of course, but, I definitely had some good performances and, against top guys. And I would have thought I would at least should have got a 3rd fight just to try to prove myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, who gave you the news that you were released by the UFC?
It actually came from my manager, Lex McMahon, that it was going to happen. So I kind of knew right after the fight that it was going to happen. And, after Lex had told me they was probably going to let me go, then that's when I got the emails from the UFC.
Oh, I see. Now, Titan, that's an organization where the guys running it you're very familiar with, Lex McMahon and Jeff Aronson, guys who you've had a relationship with in the past. How much different do they run the shows than the UFC? You fought for Titan once before. How different is it from the UFC, or is it pretty much the same atmosphere? Obviously, they have a good television deal. They have a great roster. They know how they know the business. They know how it works. How different is it from the big show?
It's not much different. It is a big show itself, so it's not too much different. Everything seems the same. They fly you in just like the UFC. They give you a room just like the UFC. They take care of you. Anything you want, you let them know. They'll bring it to you. So it's all pretty much the same. That's what I like about it. It still makes you feel like you're still up on that level. And, I enjoy fighting for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the relationship in place that you have with those guys, was there ever any doubt that you would be going to Titan? Like, obviously, if you're not fighting the UFC, Titan is a great spot for you because, they're trying to get guys into the UFC, guys, who are up-and-comers, try to get them a place to get seen and get them there, or guys like yourself who've been to the big show, suffered some losses and are trying to rebuild and get back there. So it makes sense because you want to get back to the UFC, but since you have that relationship, was it basically a no-brainer that you'd be going to Titan?
Yeah, it was pretty much no-brainer. I mean, Lex had mentioned to me, a couple months after the release from UFC, I've already had, I think, two local fights. And, I was kind of just asking him, what was going to be the next step. And, of course, UFC told me I need to go back on the local circuit, win a couple local fights, 3 to 4 local fights, and they consider bringing me back. And, Lex had mentioned to me that he thinks he might have me a pretty good deal with Titan, and they was going to have a television deal on CBS and everything like that. So, I was game. I said, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, before your fight back at Titan FC 27 against Eric Marriott, Jeff Aronson keeps telling the story about how he gave you guys like a little pre-fight speech, like, go do this and go do that, and we'll give you a bonus at the end of the fight. You get a finish, you're going to get a bonus. Do you remember this story? Do you remember walking up to him and saying, hey, get your checkbook ready? Do you remember this story?
Oh, for sure. I kept hearing about the Titan was going to start giving a finish bonus. He never said what the bonus was or anything like that, but, everybody hearing that you're going to get an extra bonus just for finishing your guy. I'm not saying that necessarily is going to make you fight harder, but because you're already trying to do that, but it definitely lights a little fire under you and makes you really want to finish your guy.
I see. Now, that fight back in February, Titan FC 27 against Eric Marriott, you won the fight by unanimous decision. It was a great fight. You showed a lot of improvements. You didn't get the finish, but considering what you were going through, you had a broken hand in that fight. You still looked very good. Overall, were you pleased with what you had done on that night?
I was pleased with just the performance itself, just by being able to stop his takedowns and, show my top game off a little more and, show some good ground and pound. So, of course I wanted to win. It would have been nice. I mean, the finish, that would have been nice. But, didn't get it. But once again, I fought a guy that had, 30-plus fights and has never been finished. So, and I thought I'd come close a couple times in the fight. So, I was pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, coming up on August 22nd at Titan FC 29, there's a title shot on the line. This fight between you and Lloyd Woodard is a title eliminator. You guys are going to be filling in one half of the vacant title picture. Does that take a little bit of pressure off now that you know the stakes of the fight, now that you know that, you don't have to go out there and do something crazy and risk it all to try to get a title shot or something? You know what you're going into. You know this is a title eliminator. Does it make it easier going into this fight knowing the stakes already?
Not really, It's, I really want to try to take one fight at a time. And, can't look past a guy like Lloyd Woodard, a guy that's made it to the Bellator quarterfinals, I believe, twice. A guy like that, you just can't look past. Because if I did look past him, he'd be the one setting up on the number one contender spot. So all my focus is on him right now. I'm not even really thinking about the title or anybody else that I could be fighting for the title. Right now is Lloyd Woodard, and I got about right around 2 weeks left to get ready for him.
Mm-hmm. Is it safe to say if you're not in the UFC, you're going to only be fighting for Titan?
Unless something really great comes along, I would say it's pretty safe to say that. Mm-hmm. And I don't have no plans of going, anywhere else besides the UFC. So, I love working for these guys, Lex and Jeff. So as long as they think that Titan's the place for me and that's where they want me, then that's where I'll stay.
Mm-hmm. The reason I ask is because there's new management with Bellator. Scott Coker is the boss there now, and he had a little bit of a role when you were at Strikeforce. It wasn't, like he was doing before Zuffa bought Strikeforce and the role he has now with Bellator, but he's there. They've got a different regime. Then you have World Series of Fighting that's always looking for good fighters. So I'm just curious, has any of those organizations reached out to you, or any other organizations? Like, what kind of offers have you been getting as of late? Because I got to assume that your last performance and what you've been doing post UFC has got some of these organizations calling Lex McMahon.
If they have, he hadn't said anything, which I don't know if they have or not. It's always good, if everybody's wanting you. So I wouldn't mind everybody, wanting me. But I'm not sure, what that story would be, or where I would go if I didn't fight in UFC or Titan. So, but it feels good. If everybody wants me, then I'm happy with that,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, let's just say a local fight comes up and one of the promoters in your area says, hey, we want you to fight. Is that possible? Is your Titan deal, flexible like that? Is it a possibility to take local fights still, or are you exclusive to Titan?
No, I'm pretty much exclusive to Titan, which I don't know if I would want to take a step down like that anyways, so I'm exclusive to Titan. The only thing they give me is UFC out calls in case the UFC would have called.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think I'm pretty much stuck with Titans.
Oh, I see. I'm just curious, Kurt, are you a full-time fighter, or do you work a second job?
No, I actually work a full-time job, 40 hours a week, and train to fight.
Really? What's the job?
I'm an alarm technician, fire alarm, cameras, burglar alarm.
I see.
So, it's pretty much 8 to 4 to 4:30. That's my day job, and then sometimes I try to get a workout in the mornings before, and then right around 6:30 to 9 at night. That's my training time. And then come home, spend some time with my kids, eat, go to bed, get up, and do it again.
Now, you've been doing a lot of media. I've seen, interviews online of yours all over the place. How much media have you done, and how much does it compare to the media that you did when you were fighting in the UFC? Is it way more now with Titan? Is it about the same as when you were at the big show? Is it less? What kind of media have you done compared to what you did in the UFC?
To be honest, right now I think I'm doing a little bit more than what I did in the UFC. I took the UFC fight with Siler right out, I think, about a month. I think I had 4 weeks to train for that fight, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So I don't think that I got, a whole bunch of attention for that fight. Everybody knew me as the guy that stepped up and fought Pat Healy in Strikeforce and gave him a good fight. So, but I still didn't get too much media. But now